Sairam. Today we will be reading from Easwaramma, the Chosen Mother of Bhagavan Sri Satya Sai Baba by Professor N. Kasturi. Chapter 4, Serpent Hill. Easwaramma grieved at the thought of separation. She was afraid of the undeserved ridicule Satya was sure to earn, when his own brother believed that he was indulging in involuntary trickery under the influence of evil spirits. But there was no high school within a radius of 20 miles, and Satya was so bright that keeping him away from education seemed a sacrilege. To be able to go to Uravakonda and live under the care of his brother was the best possible thing for him, she knew, as she prayed to the divine to smoothen and sweeten his days at the Serpent Hill. Pedda Venkaparaju, however, had little sympathy to spare. He was aghast at the strange doings of his son. His mind was soaked in the folk culture that attributed every deviation from the normal to the machination of rivals, the rites of witches, or the designs of the devil. Easwaramma had to sigh and cry alone, and it must be added, now and then, to exult and enthuse. For stories begin to seep through the intervening miles of the marvels Satya had authored, of the cures he had effected, of the problems he had solved, as well of the hardships he had had to undergo, the head loads of fuel he had to carry home from the jungle. During Satya's visit to Puttaparthi, while he was at Urvakonda, Easwaramma gave him the invigorating oil bath, that is to say, smearing till oil on the head, trunk, and limbs, massaging the muscles to make them tougher and more malleable, and washing the oil off with a forceful douche of hot water and soap nut solution. She observed one day on Satya's left shoulder a broadish length of blackened, thickened skin. She found that Satya did not complain of pain when the patch was touched or even pressed. Satya laughed when she wanted to know how he had acquired that mark, but when Easwaramma insisted, he told her that perhaps the skin was rendered so as the result of his carrying water pots hung on both ends of a pole borne to his shoulder. There was only one well at Uravakonda, wherein the water was potable. All the others yielded brackish stuff, and that one well was nearly a kilometer away. So he had to walk to and fro about 6 times, thrice each in the morning and in the evening, in order to quench the thirst of the family of the brother with whom he stayed, as well as the families of 2 neighbors who appealed for help. Easwaramma said, "You must come away from there. They are exploiting your goodness and your desire to serve. Why should they depend on you for water?" Baba intervened with the answer, "I felt it is my duty, Amma. How long can the children survive on the brackish poison? I carry the water of life from that distance gladly, mother. I have come to do this service." That made Easwaramma stop arguments and keep silent. The Dawn of Declaration. The 11th day of March 1940 dawned at Puttaparthi. The sun peeped into the valley from atop the hills, and a messenger peeped into the Raju home from Uravakonda. There was a letter from Seshamaraju to his father. Easwaramma watched her husband's face as he read it. She saw the tears trickle down. "It's Satya," he said, "but it's nothing serious, only a scorpion. It happened 3 days ago at dusk. And listen, Seshamma writes that Satya was in deep sleep for a whole day after, but had no pain. No one is allowed to sleep after a sting, for fear of heightening the effect of the poison, so Easwaramma was scared." Easwaramma was luckily unaware of how disastrous a scorpion's sting could be when it happened at Uravakonda of all places. It was named Serpent Hill because on the crest of the hill was a tall rock, ending in a hood that threatened to strike the town. Spending their days in the shadow of that rock, people believed that scorpions and snakes strike only to kill in that area. Commanded by the petrified Uraga, cobra. Venkaparaju, however, knew that stings there had to be fatal, So he got ready to leave at once for the fateful spot. Within hours, however, there came another messenger with a second letter, which announced that Satya had recovered consciousness, though still in rather bad shape. He would not eat or drink. He seemed unaware of what was happening around him. He seemed to be somewhere else, conversing with invisible beings. Easwaramma could not bear to hear more. She begged her husband to take her along as she muttered desperate prayers all the way. She asked for but one boon, that Satya be normal. She no longer wanted him to be unique or even cleverer than the rest. Those were long days and nights of anxiety for Easwaramma. None had the balm that could calm her. Seshamaraju could only wring his hands in despair. He had exhausted all the remedies he knew. He had brought in astrologers, priests, palmists, homeopaths, naturopaths, and no less a dignitary than the district medical officer. But all their efforts proved futile, while Satya sat calm and indifferent as the center of the whirlpool of worry. Everyone was at their wits' end. When Easwaramma finally insisted that he be brought back to Puttaparthi, the company of his little brother, 6 years old now and anxious to begin playing with the famous Satya, would, she hoped, bring him back to normalcy. And home they returned. But the very boys once led by Satya through the streets of many a village, singing and dancing the glory of God, were now confronted with the forbidding flash in the eye and a faraway tune on the tongue. Grandfather Kondamaraju quoted stories from the Puranas and from the Yoga Vasishta to quell the agitation of the parents. The Yoga Vasishta, the famous Sanskrit text, relates that Rama passed through a similar state of inner indolence at about the same age. His body grew emaciated, his mind flirted from one idea to another. He sat silent like a painting on the wall. Kondamaraju recited the first 2 lines of the verse, describing Rama's condition as depicted in the epic. Kim sampada, kim vipada, kim gehena, kim ingitaha. What is wealth? What is calamity? What is home? What is desire? Sarvam eva asad ityukta tushinam eko patishtite. All are only unreal, thus saying, silent and alone he sat. Kondamaraju, always mystically inclined, found comfort in these words, but it could not satisfy others. Pedda Venkaparaju was accused of being callous and insensitive by groups that had gathered around the dumbstruck boy, and poor Easwaramma could not bear the insinuations about the origin of his illness and the dire predictions of its future course. She shut herself in a room away from everyone, praying in despair to the divine. Satya, though indifferent to the upsets he was causing, was not unaware of them. He evinced deep pity at times and derisive tolerance. His face would light up when someone among the people around him claimed ability to cure him, and periodically the guru in him blossomed into poetic exhortations, urging everyone to resist the craving for exploitation and cultivate self-restraint and self-respect. These outpourings were signs of the victory of his will over the predominantly apathetic state of his mind. His sisters, who were always beside him, anxiously awaiting a chance to offer him something to eat or drink, noted down these poetic teachings, but Easwaramma discouraged them, afraid of the lines reaching elders and inflaming the exploiters who would undoubtedly recognize themselves as the boy's target. But the time for patience ran out soon. Seshamaraju sent a message that Satya had already been too long absent from school. Anxiety fogged the faces of his father and uncle and the wise men of the village. Others advised change of pace. The intention of those who advised patience and pilgrimage, penance and propitiation was understandably suspect, being prompted by the envy or hatred of those who would like to see the Raju family harried by a handicapped freak. A family conclave decided that Satya was possessed by a spirit, for his horoscope revealed this to an aged pandit at Kadiri. Satya was to be taken to an exorcist with quite a reputation at Brahmanapalli, a village near Kadiri. Kondamaraju was the only one who demurred, advising a longer period of wait, and of course, nobody bothered to ask the opinion of the poor mother, torn between hope and despair. The exorcist, on hearing that Satya was to be brought to him, evinced pugnacious bravado. He could invoke the goddesses Chandi, Chamundi, Simhi, and Varahi to ferret out the spirit and release the boy from its fell hold. No spirit, Hindu or Muslim, bestial or demonic, could face the ferocity of his mantras, he promised. Easwaramma and the two sisters accompanied Satya and Venkaparaju. As they jogged along in the bullock cart, the father tried to reassure the women, frightened at the fate that awaited Satya at the other end. This fellow will perform a puja for his Chandi and Chamundi and perhaps sacrifice a fowl. He will apply the blood as a dot on the boy's forehead, and that will be the end of this distressing story, he said confidently, refusing to allow Satya to shout him down when the fowl was mentioned. The man at Brahmanapalli was a terror, with his tangled hair and grating voice. His eyes burnt like live embers. A pair of heavy iron tongs was held in his hand as he struck the ground with it each time he roared a mantra against the spirit. The force of that stroke was terrific, and the vibrations it set up were so horrendous that the Puttaparthi family shuddered, appalled at the ordeal that Satya had obviously to undergo at the hands of such a monster. But there was not a ripple or wrinkle of fear on Satya's face. His placidity gradually imbued them with courage. They decided to stay on until the man declared that Satya was rid of the spirit and was alone with himself. 9 years later, when I was in Puttaparthi, Pandit Rama Sarma from Venkatagiri was given permission by Swami to recite a Buddha Katha, a poetic narration of the story Balasai, of Sai as child and boy, before a small group of devotees. As the recital approached Brahmanapalli and was about to describe the dreadful scene, Swami asked Sarma to skip those verses as it would be too powerful to hear. I took courage into my hands to ask him, Swami, then why did you go through that torture? I willed that people should know that I remain unaffected by what happens to this body. I have come to remind mankind of this truth that they have ignored. How can they have faith unless I act as they should, was Swami's answer. The exorcist began lashing Satya to beat the spirit out of the boy. The parents couldn't stand it. Easwaramma begged him to stop, but he refused to halt the treatment halfway through. You may take him, but the spirit, Pichi, is him in mine. Take what belongs to you after giving me what belongs to me, he yelled. The treatment included shaving Satya's scalp clean and incising a deep cross into it. Lemon juice was squeezed into the wounds and pots of chilled water poured over his head. Then a paste that would broil the victim in excruciating pain was applied to his eyes. Satya's eyes became bloodshot. His face swelled with pain through it all. He remained silent and almost unaware of the fuss going on around him. Easwaramma could bear it no longer. Here was her son, with a strayed body, damaged eyes, and wounds with burning pain, and, even then, the wizard did not guarantee that the boy would be normal. It seemed far better to put up with the ghost in him, for it limited itself to producing alternate bouts of tear and laughter, Sanskrit and Telugu wisdom and satire. After desperate pleading, Satya was finally removed from the man's clutches. He allowed them to take him home on one condition. He was to be brought back within 6 months or else. Luckily, he did not spell out what that last threat boded. He insisted, too, that Venkamas, Satya's elder sister, was not to be brought along again. She had been continually foiling the witch doctor's efforts by secretly applying an ointment to Satya's eyes under her brother's whispered instructions. At Puttaparthi, Easwaramma tried reasoning with the son, telling him of the fear and suspicion he had aroused. Everyone is worried because you are ill. When you are quiet, that man at Brahmanapalli tells us you have rock fever. When you walk a little fast, he says it is stag fever. It's absurd. I know you don't have fever. When you begin talking like a pundit, people say you are possessed. And when you find fault with your uncle and cousins, they say that it cannot be you that is talking. When you make statements like asking Venkama to look up at the night and see the Devatas passing across, they say you are mad. O Satya, be a Raju child. Be ordinary. Return to your brother and go back to school. Don't behave like a guru, a Brahmagnani. People call you so only to ridicule you. But her plea did not help. Satya stuck stoutly to his reality. Prescriptions galore continued to be offered by well-wishers. Easwaramma listened to them with deep hope. One such suggestion was to take him to Gorantla, to a physician there, who was certain he could rid the boy of his hallucinations. A cart packed with people, with Satya and his mother in their midst, was on his way, when suddenly the bullock stood stiff and still. When everyone gave up pushing and prodding, the cart turned backwards towards Puttaparthi.